So welcome everyone to our last GBM of the semester. Today we have a guest speaker, Dr. Megan Larison. She completed her PharmD at the University of Kentucky in 2020 and is currently working as a Oncology Global Medical Affairs Fellow at Merck. So welcome, Dr. Megan Larison.
Hi, thank you so much for that introduction, Jasmine. I'm so excited to be talking to your group today. I've talked to a lot of different med students, but it's always nice when I have students that are pretty much focused on pharmacy. So I'm really excited to talk with you all today. I'll start sharing my slides, so just let me know when you can see my screen. Okay, can everyone see my slide so far? Yeah, perfect, thank you. So I will be talking about pursuing a pharmacy path. So I'll talk a little bit about my journey to where I've gotten now and through pharmacy school, and a little bit more about my fellowship and what I do on like a day-to-day basis. I did receive some questions beforehand, so I will try to answer those throughout the presentation. I also have them up, so if I'm looking over here, I'm just referring back to those, and we'll try to answer them throughout as well. If you have questions throughout the presentation, feel free to just ask them either with your mic or in the chat. Sometimes it's hard to check the chat while I'm presenting, but if I don't see them during, I'll make sure to get to them at the end, and I'll also leave some time at the end to answer any other questions that you have. So as Jasmine mentioned, I graduated from the University of Kentucky College of Pharmacy in May of 2020, so not too long ago. And I'm currently working in a postdoctoral oncology global medical affairs fellowship. So just a little disclaimer I have to throw in here. So the opinions expressed in this presentation and on the following slides are solely those of myself and not of Rutgers or Merck, and they do not guarantee the accuracy or reliability of the information provided in them. So first, I like to always start out with why pharmacy. So you sitting there today are probably have your own why and why you're interested in pharmacy. But these are some of the top things that really drew me to the field of pharmacy, and I'm sure we have those in common for you as well. Whether you have decided to pursue a path in pharmacy or you're still unsure if that's what you want to do, maybe some of these tips and pointers will help you with that decision. So for me, when I was probably in high school or even beginning of undergrad, I knew I wanted to go into the healthcare field, and particularly pharmacy. I didn't necessarily like the hands-on type of patient care interactions. I don't like needles or blood and things like that. I just don't do well with. So I felt like pharmacy was a good path because you still are able to learn a lot about the human body, how medications are metabolized and work in the human body, which is so interesting to me, and still having that patient impact, but you don't have to do all the hands-on stuff. So as I mentioned, it can be direct or indirect patient care. So for me right now, I'm working in an indirect patient care setting in the pharmaceutical industry. So I don't work with patients at all on a daily basis, but my work that I do every day is ultimately impacting patients. So I'll talk about that more in later slides. And then, as you know, direct patient care, either in a retail pharmacy or hospital, pharmacists are seeing patients face-to-face, whether that's providing medical advice, counseling on medications, administering vaccines, etc. So with pharmacy, there is a wide variety of career opportunities. Most people just think about retail pharmacy when they hear pharmacy or pharmacist, but really there's so many more opportunities out there. And that's one of my passions, is just educating pharmacy students on other non-traditional pharmacy roles, whereas I'm very passionate in pursuing a career in the pharmaceutical industry, and I think other people should be as well. So I will touch on more of those opportunities in the next few slides. Next, I think if you have these characteristics or qualities, if you are very innovative and detail-oriented, I think those are one of the top two characteristics that future pharmacists should have, because really going into pharmacy, whether you're in a hospital or retail or industry, you have to have an innovative mindset, always thinking of the best way to take care of a patient, new processes of doing things, dispensing medication. So it's always really important to be innovative in this field, as well as detail oriented. So whether you're checking a prescription for accuracy and making sure it's the right strength, the right directions on it, actually the right medication, even in the bottle. You have to be very detail oriented. To the work I do in the pharmaceutical industry, I'm reviewing medical information, medical materials, and making sure they're accurate. So that is very detail oriented work as well. Next is the job mobility, stability, and flexibility. So by mobility, I mean that you can really move around. You're not stuck in just one area of pharmacy for your whole career. Whereas I know dental students, if you go into and want to specialize after dental school and you complete a fellowship and a residency to do, per se, pediatric dentistry, you only can practice pediatric dentistry like the rest of your life. Whereas in pharmacy, you really can move around. You can start in hospital, do that for a few years, you can go to industry, you can even come back. Really, it's so open and flexible in that aspect. And then the job stability. So I know a lot of people start to say that pharmacy is becoming very saturated. And so I think that it depends where you're really looking and the types of roles or positions that you're looking at that may be considered saturated. But I think pharmacists are always going to be needed. And especially right now in the middle of a pandemic, they're using pharmacists to administer these vaccines and are really playing a key role in rolling out the vaccines. So that's just another area that pharmacists are always going to be needed. And then just our unique set of skills, I think it makes us great just candidates for any type of pharmacy role. And then lastly, pharmacists are one of the most highly respected and trusted professionals. So in a retail pharmacy setting, patients can walk straight up to the counter and ask for medication advice, whereas if they have symptoms of something and then have to go into a doctor's office, make an appointment, wait for the doctor to see them, and then potentially make a recommendation for an over-the-counter medication. Patients don't have to do any of that with pharmacists. They can go straight to them, and they are highly respected by other healthcare providers, especially in the hospitals. They rely heavily on their pharmacists to help with dosing, like antibiotics and other medications. So now I will speak to the career opportunities in pharmacy. So these are kind of the main ones that you hear about or you may have not heard about. But as mentioned, hospital is definitely a very popular area for pharmacy. So if you are considering going into hospital, most pharmacists will complete a residency after their 4 years of pharmacy school. And this just will help you become more competitive and specialize in a certain area. So you can specialize in oncology in a hospital and work at a cancer center. You can specialize in critical care. So you're working in a hospital in like the critical care unit. And really those opportunities are endless for pharmacists in hospitals. And then the retail setting, as many of you are probably aware of, you're working at like a Walgreens, CVS. So this is probably the most like direct job that you can get after pharmacy school. You don't require any additional postgraduate training, doesn't require like a residency or a fellowship. So if you're someone that's like, don't want to go through the residency and fellowship route, retail would be a great career path for you, because you can start out making a nice salary, just go straight into retail. And then industry is where I'm currently working. So pharmaceutical industry are your drug manufacturing companies. So I know pharma kind of gets a bad rep sometimes, but really we are on the side of the patient and wanting to help patients. So each pharmaceutical company obviously develops different drugs, vaccines, and most of the time the people on the team either have PharmDs, MDs, PhDs, so all advanced degrees. And it really, being a pharmacist in industry, bring a unique skill set, and having that clinical background and patient interaction really helps the work come and reach the patient later on. So then ambulatory care is kind of like an outpatient center. And if you are specializing in like a diabetes clinic or a warfarin clinic, patients can come in and the pharmacist will see them and adjust their medications. So veterinarian pharmacy, so this is just compounding and prescribing and filling medications for veterinarian animals. So could be larger animals like equine pharmacy. And then lastly, managed care. So this is kind of between the payer and the patient getting the medication. So you help patients optimize their insurance benefits and getting the best medication for them at the best price. So any questions so far? I don't have the chat up, so just feel free to speak up if you have any questions about any of these areas. If not, I'll move on.
Oh, hi, I'm sorry. I joined a little late. Can you explain the hospital one and then the ambulatory care, please, again?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry if you had said something in the chat. It's really hard to see when you're presenting. But so hospital, it really depends what area, if you want to specialize in hospital or just say you're wanting to do advanced hospital. So you could work in like a central fill pharmacy where you just check prescriptions. So pharmacy technicians are making your IV bags and then the pharmacist will check them and make sure that they are filled correctly. Or you could be on the side of more patient interaction. So you could just do like advanced hospital and you could go and round with other healthcare professionals. So this is a really fun area, at least for me when I was on rotations in pharmacy school, because you really get to help make recommendations for the patient. So you'll round on patients with like an attending physician, maybe physical therapy, their nurse, like nutrition, dietitian. So you're rounding with this whole care team, and it's really cool opportunity to make good recommendations, adjusting doses, taking away medications that patients don't need. So if you want more of the patient interaction in hospital pharmacy. And then ambulatory care is more at like an outpatient clinic. So pharmacists can have a collaborative care agreement with the physician, and patients per se, if you were just doing like a warfarin clinic, so they would come in, get their INR tested, which tells you like how thin or how thick their blood is. And then if they need to go up on their medication, the pharmacist can make those recommendations to go up or down on their medication based off of their testing. So really any type of like outpatient care things where like diabetes, so patients could come in and get their glucose tested, the pharmacist could do that and then make recommendations on like their insulin or changing things like that. Does that answer your question better?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions about these roles in pharmacy? If not, I'll move on. So next is applying to pharmacy school. So I know this is going to relate to a lot of you right now, and if you have any questions, feel free to like ask after I go over this slide for sure, because I know it's a really stressful time when you're thinking about applying to pharmacy school, and it seems like it's been a while for me, so I might not have the most up-to-date information about applying to pharmacy school, but just an overall tips in general for applying. So I think first recommendation is to acquire leadership experience. So this is like getting involved in your undergraduate organizations. They don't even have to be pharmacy related. Just taking on something that shows that you have leadership skills and can work well with others. It's just about gaining that experience and responsibility. So for example, during my time in undergrad, I joined a student wellness ambassador organization. And so I took on some leadership roles and coordinated and set up events in that organization, which it was health related, which related really well to pharmacy, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, I was in a sorority as well. I helped with like the community service chair. So it really doesn't have to be pharmacy related, but if it is, it's just an extra bonus. So definitely get involved with stuff during undergrad as well. And then this next one, you all are doing great at, so join your pre-pharmacy clubs. This is really important because they're the ones that are going to provide you with most of the information on like applying to the pharmacy school and what they require and just learning more about pharmacy. So definitely recommend staying involved in pre-pharmacy clubs of like the schools that you're wanting to apply to for sure. And then next is gain pharmacy experience if you can, whether that's applying as a pharmacy technician or just even shadowing different pharmacists. So I got a job in undergrad, I think it was my sophomore year. I knew I wanted to go to pharmacy school, so I applied to be just a pharmacy technician. And most of the time, if you tell them that you're going to pharmacy school or interested in going to pharmacy school, they'll be very willing to hire you because they want you to stay on with them. And once you become an intern, it gives you more things that you're able to do in the pharmacy and help them with. So I think pharmacists are really good about like giving back and providing you those opportunities. So I highly recommend that. And then shadowing, which I know is really hard right now during COVID, but even virtual shadowing, I think, is something that you can reach out to pharmacists and try to do, or even just setting up phone calls with different pharmacists and asking more about their roles and what they do. But I think it's really important to kind of get that experience in pharmacy and make sure that's what you want to do before you go to pharmacy school, because pharmacy school is a lot of money, first off, and then second off, it is very hard. Like, I'm not going to lie and say it's easy. It's a lot of dedication, a lot of sacrifices of 4 years. And so you want to make sure that it is like the career path that you're really wanting to pursue before you jump in. And then next is going ahead and starting to build your CV or resume, whatever's required for like the application process. I know more towards residency and fellowship, you need a CV, but just it's never too soon to start working on that, because that's something that you're going to use throughout the rest of your schooling and your career. So going ahead and starting that, because it does get really hard if you're in undergrad for 3 or 4 years and you come to apply to pharmacy school and then you try to think back on all the things that you've been involved with, which I'm sure you've done lots of things, but it makes it really hard to think back over 3 years about everything you've done. So whether you actually start and format your resume or CV, at least start a list of things that you are doing in undergrad and that you would want to put on your CV, because it'll make it so much easier when you go down to write your CV and you have all of those experiences that you can just build right into it. And then next, preparing for interviews. So right now, most interviews are being conducted virtually, but it's always good to start preparing for interviews, because I know this is something that at least I had to do in the applying process to pharmacy school, and was something I was always very nervous about doing. But I think if you prepare well enough, then it really helps calm your nerves. So it's never too soon to really start preparing for interviews. Really connect with people at the pharmacy school, figure out what type of interviews that they do, and then just look up interview questions and tips online and start practicing those. So next, after you've gone through your 4 years of pharmacy school, which it's, for me, which I think most pharmacy schools are structured this way, but it's 3 years of your courses, and then your last year is all rotations. I know there were some questions about pharmacy school and the types of classes and stuff. One of them was like, what was your most challenging class in pharmacy school? So first, I would just start off with saying, I think pharmacy school is just a whole nother level from undergrad. And first, it's learning like how to study and learn the material, because it is so much material over the 3 years. And it's not like you just learn it and dump it. Like, you have to know it and learn it, because everything builds upon each other for each class. And to take the NAPLEX, you're going to have to know everything you learned over those 3 years. So it's really learning how to study and retain the material. And it's all kind of trial and error. Everyone studies differently, everyone learns differently. So that first year is more figuring out just what's the best way for you. For me personally, probably the most challenging class I had was pharmacokinetics. It was just really challenging. We had like a lot of statistics with it, and it just wasn't a very fun class, but got through it, passed, so that's all that matters. Trying to see if there's any other questions I can answer before I jump into this part. So pre-pharmacy classes that helped me with most of graduate school. So that would definitely be your science classes. I think that would help the most. Unfortunately, organic chemistry, you'll use that a little bit in pharmacy school, not as much biology, just more chemistry, I would say. And then physiology was another, I think, important class, just learning about the body and how the body works, because once you get into learning the drugs, then you're going to learn how like the drugs work in the body. So I think those go really closely together. So, okay, I'll move on to this slide and then come back to any other questions that I feel like pertain to this. So these are the most common postgraduate training options if you decide not to go like straight into retail or any other entry-level positions. If you're wanting to do more advanced training, like specialize, this is usually the route. They say that residency and fellowships provide you 3 to 5 years of training in 1 to 2. So it really helps you accelerate your career path and get to where you're wanting to be in your career in a lot shorter amount of time. So I will be focusing mainly on fellowship because that's what I'm completing right now, but I can speak to the other ones a little bit, and if you have questions on them, I can try to answer them just based off of my friends that have done residencies. So residency, you are working directly with patients most of the time in a hospital setting, and when you apply to a PGY1, it is just general. So you're going to be completing rotations throughout a hospital in all different areas. Then if you want to specialize in, let's say, like infectious disease, then you would need to do a PGY2 in just ID only. And then after that, you can become board certified in infectious diseases. So it helps you gain like another certification. With fellowships, they're a little bit different in the aspect of they're either 1 or 2 years. Most of them are 2 years, I would say, and they're kind of divided up by the position or functional area, which I'll go into more, so I won't talk about that as much right now. And then managed care residency, these are more working with like your Humana or Anthem, like your insurers. And it's not in a hospital setting or anything, but you are working with patients, usually over the phone. So as I mentioned, a pharmaceutical industry fellowship is 1 or 2 years of postgraduate training. So they can either be completed with a partner pharmaceutical company, which I'm at Merck. And then the company, the program of your fellowship is either academic affiliated or standalone. So pharmaceutical companies can have their own fellowships and not be associated with an academic like university. So my fellowship is with Rutgers University out of New Jersey. It's one of the largest fellowship programs in the US. So very proud of the fellowship program. They have a long history of alumni in the industry now. So I think there's kind of pros and cons to both. I don't think like one is better than the other. It's more just what your interests are and what you're really wanting to get out of a fellowship. So I pursued the academic affiliated fellowship because it really provides you with so many opportunities for professional development, networking, and teaching. So as a fellow with the university, you can teach pharmacy students. So I've helped out and taught a few OSCE labs and done like outreach visits to other pharmacy schools. You also have monthly meetings right now virtually, but those meetings have guest speakers that come in and talk to you about different experiences, like leadership experiences. They'll talk to you about other areas of the pharmaceutical industry. So really just things to help you become a more well-rounded professional. And then they also are in a therapeutic area of interest. So for me, I'm in an oncology fellowship. Originally, I would have never thought I would be in oncology in pharmacy school because oncology was a very, very challenging class. And I really didn't enjoy it because it was so hard and the drugs are just really hard to learn. But I had a rotation that was in industry, but it was in oncology. So I was really excited because it was industry, but the oncology part, I was like, it's okay. Like, I'll just do it. Well, I ended up loving it. We got to go to a patient advocacy program, and that we actually did have patient interaction. And it was just a really rewarding experience. So I know there was a question about like why I chose to do oncology. So it is a really exciting area in the pharmaceutical industry because unfortunately there's not a cure for cancer yet. So there's so much research going on, and it's really one of like the life-changing areas just of the pharmaceutical industry because you're literally helping discover and produce drugs that are either extending or increasing a patient's quality of life. And I don't know, probably most of you have been affected by someone in your family or a friend that you know that has had cancer. And they are the most strong-willed patients. They're willing to try to do whatever they can to really save their lives. And so it's just really rewarding, even from an industry aspect of helping enroll them in maybe a clinical trial if they've failed chemotherapy and that's their only option. And then just seeing what these other options after chemotherapy can help do for these patients that have more advanced disease. There were a few other questions. So, is there a difference between fellowing oncology and residency? Yes, absolutely. So a residency in oncology would be in like a cancer center. So you would be dealing with the patients directly. So like in an infusion center, they're coming in, they're getting their infusions, whether it's chemotherapy, immunotherapy. You would be maybe checking in on them, seeing how they're doing, if they're having any adverse reactions, and just checking, see how they're tolerating their medications, helping dosing them. So a resident in that setting is definitely directly with the patient, whereas a fellow in oncology, I am supporting an oncology drug. And where I'm in my fellowship, I'm in medical information. So we get a lot of requests from HCPs, healthcare professionals, so like oncologists, and they're asking questions about our drug for their patient, asking like, oh, how do you manage this adverse reaction? And then we have data that we can send them and provide that information for them on how to best care for their patient. So I hope that answers that question for whoever asked that. I think that was most of the oncology ones. So now moving on to more of an overview of the pharmaceutical industry. You're probably like, what is this girl talking about? I don't know anything about the pharmaceutical industry, because I really didn't know about it much until like right before pharmacy school. But as mentioned earlier, it's a great opportunity for pharmacists. And I think it really provides you a great work-life balance. So you don't have to work any weekends or holidays, but that doesn't mean you don't have to work like over hours or longer days. It's still definitely very tedious work, very hard work and like demanding, but just a little bit more flexible than if you were working in like a hospital or retail setting. If you're like wanting to have a family and don't want to miss certain holidays or have certain commitments on weekends, this is a great like work-life balance career. So in the pharmaceutical industry, kind of like to think of it as like an umbrella of all these different functional areas that work together. So I'm currently in medical affairs, and they work really between kind of the marketing area, so marketing the medical data, and then putting that back into clinical development. So if you're getting insights from people in the field, which field employees mean they're not working in the headquarters office, they're kind of traveling or right now doing virtual and meeting with doctors or oncologists and just seeing how their patients are being treated with a certain medication and how they can improve that. So then that goes back into the clinical development and the whole like strategy and plan of the company to develop better clinical trials that will reach more patients. So that kind of ties those together. Regulatory affairs is overseeing like the materials and just the marketing of the drugs. So the commercials you see on TV, they have to go through a very thorough review process, making sure that they're aligning with the FDA's regulations. And then that kind of overlaps with safety as well. So any adverse reports go back to safety, and they kind of keep those documented, and we'll look into them and feed them back to clinical development if there needs to be further investigation on various adverse reactions. And then health economics and outcomes research works more on the payer side, so making sure that the drug is affordable and that it's able to be on different hospitals' formularies. So really working with that health economic standpoint. So I think this can really apply to anything, not just choosing a functional area and industry. This can apply to if you're interested in a residency or retail. Think about these things as well. So learn more about that area or position. You can do that by starting to build your network. I definitely recommend having a LinkedIn if you haven't started one yet. I think that's a great way to just start your professional development and career, as well as building your network, which is so important, especially in industry, but pharmacy in general is small too. So it's really good to meet people in the same area that you never know might help you like down the road. And then just considering your personality, skills, and preferences. So as mentioned, industry really has a nice like work-life balance, but do you like having that patient interaction? Is that something you prefer? Because you won't really get that as much in an industry setting. Even though you are impacting patients' lives daily, you don't get to see them per se face to face. So considering that as well. And then, do you like being around people a lot, or would you rather be kind of working on your own and doing things like that, or would you rather be collaborating and working in a very like high pace, fast environment? And then gaining experience in the areas that you're interested in, which pharmacy school will provide you these opportunities during your last year of rotations. So especially if you're in industry, it's hard to get industry rotations, but it is possible. I had two. So most schools either have at least one or two set up, and then I highly recommend just applying to them on your own as well. And then internships over the summer are always good, but just gain experience and make sure it's what you really want to do and that you're passionate about. So now going into more what I do as an Oncology Global Medical Affairs Fellow. So it's kind of hard to describe day-to-day activities because most days are different, and that's really the part that I love about the pharmaceutical industry, is that it's a very stimulating environment. You're not going to get tired of doing the same thing over and over. I like having a schedule, but I get kind of bored if I'm doing the same task every day or not having a new challenge. And really, the pharmaceutical industry, no matter what area you're in, you're going to have new things coming up. You may be working on a project and it might not be due for a month or so, but then something else more urgent comes up, maybe an urgent request from a doctor about a patient. You have to stop that and then just start something else. So it really provides you so many opportunities to keep learning and different things every day. But I will try to describe maybe my weeks better, because the weeks are more similar than just the days. But I would say my Tuesdays and Thursdays are pretty meeting heavy. So I may be in meetings from like 9 to 4 with like a lunch break or something. And then on Mondays and Fridays are usually not that many meetings. So they're really good days to make sure I'm caught up on my emails, work on projects, and prepare for my meetings for the week. And then my Wednesdays are kind of half and half. Like I might have a few meetings, but also have more downtime as well. So during those meetings that I talked about on Tuesdays and Thursdays, those are called promotional review team meetings. So we're reviewing medical material or promotional materials for medical accuracy. So like, you've probably seen drug commercials on TV plenty of times. Well, they have to go through a very thorough review process. So if I have a job that I'm reviewing, I have to review all of the data in it, all of the claims, making sure that the efficacy data is balanced by the safety data, that the claims they're making are not misleading, that everything has the science to back it up. So that's where the detail-oriented skills come in, because it's paying very close attention to the detail in these commercials that you've probably never even thought twice about. But during these meetings, you're on a team with marketing, employees, and regulatory affairs, as I mentioned before. So they're making sure that the pieces are going to align with the FDA's standards and regulations. And the marketing team is usually who creates these materials that go to market. And another part of my role is responding to medical information requests. So I kind of mentioned that earlier, receiving requests from doctors regarding their patients or requesting for certain data on our drug. So that's another area that is like constantly changing and is a really like challenging aspect, but in a good challenging way. It's like problem solving. I mean, you get a question, it's trying to find the right data to support it. And then I already spoke a little bit to the professional development days. So that's with the academic affiliated part where we have the meetings once a month and have different guest speakers come in and speak to us. We also have the opportunity to put together presentations to practice our presentation skills. So I think that's another really great opportunity as well as a fellow. So now I would love to take any questions. I know there was still a bunch on the list, so I can either try to go through some of those, or if you want to prioritize, or if you didn't send in questions beforehand, I'd be happy to answer whatever.
Do you like an email we can contact you? Can I ask a
Yeah,
question?
yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I should probably put that on here. I'll put it in the chat. I sent my email in there, so feel free, reach out. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. But if you have any other ones right now, just about pharmacy school, applying to pharmacy school, fellowship, anything, I'd be happy to answer.
Hi. So I had some questions regarding like about how competitive these residency and fellowship programs are. So like how did you prepare for the application process, or so kind of like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would definitely say both of them are highly competitive, but in different ways. So residency route is probably more popular amongst pharmacy students, or more common. That's usually the route most pharmacy students go. So you have a higher volume of candidates applying to residencies, but there's also more residency positions than there are fellowship positions. So it kind of helps your chances there. But I would still say the whole residency application and match process is pretty competitive. I do think residency is probably a little bit more GPA focused than fellowship. I know some residency programs may have a GPA requirement, whereas fellowship usually doesn't have any requirements for GPA. For preparing for them, so fellowship, you interview during the mid-year timeframe. I'm not sure if you've heard of ASHP mid-year, but it's a big conference usually in December. And they have booths. Either if you're pursuing residency, you can go around and talk to the different programs, but it's more laid back. You're not really interviewing, you're just trying to figure out where you want to apply to. For fellowship per se, you're going to start the application process probably around October, November. And then you might have a phone call interview before mid-year. And then once you're at mid-year, you'll have interviews during that time frame. Fellowship, like I said, it's not as like common amongst pharmacy students, but there's still, like this year we had over 1,000 applicants just to our Rutgers program, and to my position specifically, we had 166. So I think the interest is growing for sure. I think the program is only growing every year, but I think if you really prepare yourself for either route and developing the skill sets, then I think you would still have a really great chance at either.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions right now?
I have a question, Dr. Larson.
Yeah.
Sure. My name's Hamza. I'm one of the P2 advisors for Pre-Pharmacy Club. Thanks for coming to speak to our group today. They're a very ambitious group of kids, so I do appreciate your time. I just wanted to ask if some of them may be interested in some of the fellowships you mentioned on your presentation, like regulatory affairs versus medical affairs versus HEOR. What are some resources that our students can use to research that a little bit? I know for the residency folks, there's usually like ASHP. Is there anything you'd recommend?
Yes, definitely. So I'm not sure if you have it at your pharmacy school, but have you heard of like the Industry Pharmacist Organization, or IPHO?
Yes, yes.
So they have a lot of great resources on their website, and they will have like fellowship positions that are open. So I'd always use that. Even the Rutgers pharmaceutical industry website does have more information kind of on each functional area. But I would say those are probably like the two main areas to like learn more about, but honestly, just kind of like Googling them helps too. There may be some articles that describes in more detail the positions, but I would say looking at like the Industry Pharmacist Organization website and getting involved in that organization when you're in pharmacy school too will help provide you a lot more information.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Is there any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
For your first year in pharmacy school, do you recommend like I guess starting to right away, getting involved in like clubs and stuff, and maybe applying to like other like programs like shadowing and stuff, or do you think like you should take your first year, first semester to like take a break and relax and figure out kind of what works for you in pharmacy school first?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it really is more dependent on yourself and what you can handle, because as I mentioned earlier, it is a huge transition and learning how to study and handle like the larger workload than undergrad. But I also don't think that you should limit yourself. I think you should try to start getting involved, because one, it's going to help you meet people, especially like upperclassmen in pharmacy school. They can provide you tips on like studying and in different classes, and then just helping you to go ahead and jumpstart and getting that experience in organizations and leadership, because that's really important. And if you get involved, maybe join an organization your first year of pharmacy school, but don't take on a leadership role. So you're still involved, maybe go to some of their events, their meetings, and then your second year, you've already learned how to study, what works for you. Then you're like, okay, I'm ready. I think I can go ahead and get involved by taking on more leadership roles. So for me, I joined IPHO and one other organization like right off my first year of pharmacy school. I also worked as a pharmacy intern at a Rite Aid pharmacy. So I would recommend, it's really just what you think you can handle. Don't overdo it, because then you're going to let your grades go if you put too much effort into joining organizations and leadership. But I think just trying to find like that medium happy balance area, because I do think really being a more well-rounded student and having lots of experiences, diverse experiences, is more important than just focusing all on your academics.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
Do you have any interview questions that you remember being asked?
Like for pharmacy school or fellowship?
For pharmacy school.
Okay, so for pharmacy school, we did the multiple mini interviews. I'm not sure if you've heard of those or if that's what this like pharmacy school that you're applying to has, but these were like 8-minute interviews, and you would have a prompt on the door, and you would have maybe a minute or two to read it and like kind of formulate your answer in your head. And then once you go in, they would like ask you the question and you could answer it. Pretty sure none of the questions really had to do with pharmacy school. They really just want to see your thought process, how you think to solve a problem, and how you can articulate that. So I think even one of them was as random as like, who would you take on like an island with you, or like what would you take with you? And just, it's more about like, there's not a right or wrong answer, it's just how you answer it. So with that is just preparing for those interviews, knowing the STAR method. So I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's situation, task, action, result. So whenever you're asked a question for like an interview, you want to always describe the situation first, then describe the task that was required, describe the action that you took, and then the result of it. And that will help you like 100% in your interviews. So doing that, and then just, you never know what kind of questions you're going to get, so it's kind of hard to prepare. But I think there's stuff online. If they do the multiple mini interviews, you can look up questions, like sample questions for that as well.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. That was kind of a while back for me, so those questions aren't as fresh in my head, whereas like the fellowship application and questions were only a year ago, or year and a half ago probably. Any other questions? So have pretty much all of you decided that you're going to go to pharmacy school and pursuing like a pharmacist career? Or are you still trying to figure that out? So yeah. Okay, well,
Some of
that's
our
exciting.
e-board members are already committed to pharmacy school. So
Okay.
I'll let
That's exciting. Yeah, well, it's good to hear. I definitely advocate for the field. I think it really provides you a lot of great opportunities as a pharmacist. Really, the opportunities are endless, but it's more like where you see your skill sets fitting in. So I guess lastly, I'll just leave you with whatever path you go, especially if pharmacy per se, make sure you let your passion drive you, because pharmacy school is hard. And there's going to be nights that you don't want to study, or classes that you don't want to go to, but just remembering like why you're doing it at the end of the day. Once you decide really what type of pharmacy you want to do, if you want to specialize, just like let that drive you, and don't do something that you're just doing because like someone else does it. Like you have to be happy with what you're doing at the end of the day. And just remembering, like, a lot of people will stress over grades and GPA, where yes, that's important and you definitely should try to get like the best grades, but don't like get upset over it and like down on yourself about it, because really when you are applying to jobs or postgraduate training after pharmacy school, I think a candidate that has leadership experiences, more well-rounded experiences, are going to be stronger candidates and do better in the work field versus just someone that has a 4.0. In reality, in a career, you're going to have to interact with people. You're going to have to learn to deal with hard situations and hard tasks, and you're going to have to lead others. So really having those skill sets, I think, is a great opportunity to develop during pharmacy school, that just teaching or just learning and studying in the classroom won't teach you. And don't be afraid of like failure either. I had many experiences of that during pharmacy school, whether it's with something in an organization didn't go as planned. You will learn from them, and they will be great answers to use in interviews, because they will always ask you about a time when you failed. So turn it into a positive and look at as having a great interview answer later on. Any other questions? Feel free to reach out, email or LinkedIn. Sometimes I don't always answer all my DMs on Instagram, so email is probably the best contact. But if there are any last minute questions, be happy to answer.
I think that's it for the questions, but we want to thank you very much for coming to today's meeting and for that very thorough presentation. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today.
Yeah, no problem. And best of luck to all of you in your future studies and applying to pharmacy school.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Have a good evening.
You too.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen now for announcements, so just give me a few minutes. Okay, so in order to receive a certificate of membership at the banquet, you have to have your requirements done by April 16th, and that includes to attend 4 out of 6 meetings, earn 2 fundraising credits, 2 volunteering points, and pay the fee. And then, of course, at the banquet, we will be honoring the top 2 volunteering, top 2 fundraising, and top 2 leadership points. They'll receive a end of the year gift at the banquet.
So the banquet for this year is going to be virtual again. It's going to be on April 21st from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. You do have to RSVP by April 19th. And then when you RSVP, the link is also below. When you RSVP, you'll be entered into 3 raffles that are going to happen at the banquet, but you have to be at the banquet if you do win the raffle. During the banquet, we're going to give out the certificates. We're going to have different games with different prizes. The raffles, we're going to announce the new e-board and announce the top 2 volunteering, fundraising, and people with the most leadership points as well. And then, like I said, the form to RSVP is linked on the slide.
My office hours are from 12 to 1 on Mondays and Thursdays. There's the link, and then the link is also in like the weekly emails and stuff. And just let me know ahead of time if you plan on attending, or if neither of those times work for you. Just email me so we can schedule a different time. And yeah, 2 office hours is like equivalent to 1 meeting credit. So if you missed this one, if you missed any of them, then feel free to contact me.
Just a reminder that you can earn 1 fundraising credit when you make a minimum of a $5 donation to like a reputable charity. All you have to do is send me like a screenshot to my email and put your name on the Google sheet and like type the name of the foundation. And also congratulations to Isabel for winning our t-shirt raffle, and thank you for everybody that entered. All the money is going to go to supporting the club next year.
Hello. There were just some quick reminders for anything regarding money. It would be that those are the ways to contact me. And if we go to the next slide, if you haven't contacted me regarding your PIN, please do so we can get those distributed as soon as possible. I sent an email, so I don't know if everybody got it, but if you have any questions, just feel free to email me.
Thank you to everyone who's been actively volunteering at all the volunteering events. Some of the upcoming events that I have going on is the Chicago Cares. That's the Protect Chicago COVID-19 texting outreach. There's multiple dates when you could sign up for, and the location is via Zoom. Each event is worth 1 credit per date you volunteer. The other event is with UIC Credit Union One Arena Vaccine Clinic. That's going to be worth 2 credits as it's an in-person event. And there's also multiple dates to sign up using the link below. If you could go to the next slide. And there's an outside volunteering event, which is Make a Mask, and it's worth 1 credit if you make 6 masks, or 0.5 credits if you make 3 masks and you donate them to UI Health.
So just to wrap up today's meeting, the few deadlines we have, April 16th is the deadline to complete your membership requirements to obtain a certificate of membership. And then April 19th is the deadline to RSVP to the banquet. So thank you everyone for attending today's meeting. If you have any questions, feel free to stay. If not, don't forget to RSVP. The banquet is April 21st.
Thank you all. Bye.